All right, our panel is with us this morning. Let's bring in Republican strategist Kristen Soltis-Anderson. Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts remains with us. Former White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield is here, and Zolan Cano-Youngs, White House correspondent for the New York Times. Welcome all. Kate Bedingfield, this is going to be a grueling 8 monmonths for the White House.
Yes.
What does it say to you that, we are where we are at this point? I mean, one of the things the White House keeps saying, or I should say Democrats, especially in and around the campaign, keep saying is that voters didn't actually believe that Donald Trump was going to be the Republican nominee. It hasn't sunk in. Do you think it's going to sink in? Has it sunk in? Because here we are.
Yeah, I do. I think it will sink in. It's not only did voters not think Donald Trump would be the nominee, a not insignificant share of Democratic voters didn't think Joe Biden would be the nominee. So for the Biden campaign, having the candidates locked in, having the contrast of the race start to really come into focus is a good thing. It allows them to make their case. You saw in the video there from the Biden campaign, I mean, one of the big tasks that they have here is energizing their base, energizing their coalition. They're obviously going to spend the next 8 months drawing a really sharp contrast with Donald Trump on these core issues that we know are front of mind for voters: democracy, abortion, the economy. Fundamentally, one of their big tasks is getting their winning coalition from 2020 excited. And so that's what they're going to have to focus on for the next 7.5 months. And it is going to be a slog.
So we have our Gary Tuchman spoke to some undecided voters, and speaking to slog, grueling, other words that we have been using around this. We've kind of got two chunks here. So let's first look at those who say they might not vote because of their choices here. Watch.
It's the hardest job in the world, and we keep hearing stories about how he's so sharp, he's so on point behind closed doors, but I haven't seen it.
And Cash Up, why don't you like Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, I just don't think he's a good human being, and just the things that come out of his mouth makes me cringe every time, and not to mention all the indictments against him.
So you're both independents. Might you not vote in the election in November?
Unless they give us a compelling reason to change our mind.
So, Kristen Soltis-Anderson, you spend a lot of your time talking to voters like the ones that we just saw here. Is this what you hear too?
Yes. And I think the big question is going to be, will this dissatisfaction with both candidates, this feeling of, this is a slog, this is terrible, will we get to November and you have voters who say, I don't actually think there's enough of a difference between these candidates that I feel like I'm going to go put myself out there and vote? Or do we get to November, and even though voters don't love their choices, they have been persuaded that one is slightly more terrible than the other, and that is motivational enough to get them out? That's what I'm looking for from voters like the ones that we just heard from. Do they eventually come to the conclusion that they may not like the options available to them, but one is slightly more horrible than the other, and therefore it is worth them participating in the process?
Of course, the other potential issue is the third-party candidacies. That is still kind of an evolving corner of this election, but it's one that could play a major role. Here's some more with those voters talking about whether they might vote third-party.
Could there be two worse options? Right? Biden is weak in all the wrong areas. Trump is a polarizing salesman, not a statesman. We need better.
So might you not vote?
No, there are too many reasons to go and exercise my right to vote, so I will vote.
Who will you vote for?
I don't know right now.
All right.
Considering going third party, I think...
So who would that be?
I think Kennedy has a lot to offer.
So Congressman Auchincloss, he's talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., noted vaccine skeptic opponent, really. How much danger does this pose to either one of the major candidates, but especially President Biden?
This election is going to be a near-run thing. Going to come down to a few states, going to come down to a couple 100,000 voters. So any third-party candidate, especially with the last name like Kennedy, poses a significant challenge. And it's unclear out of whom he takes votes, right? Trump or Biden. And I think voters are going to have to dial into Robert F. Kennedy's access to the ballot and how he has gotten to where he is. He has used a super PAC to get onto the ballot in some states. He's looking at the Libertarian Party to get on the ballot in other states. It's all being funded by MAGA donors trying to prop him up as a stalking horse. Voters are going to have to, I think, peel back some of the layers of that name and say, who is this person really? and who is he helping? Because I think the answer is going to be he's helping Donald Trump, and who he is someone taking advantage of his family name to further his own ambitions and his own conspiracies.
Yeah, I mean, you're from the land of Camelot, Massachusetts, anyway. Do you think Democrats are taking this seriously enough in trying to push back against this? I mean, you know how powerful do you think the Kennedy name is still?
It can be compelling, and Democrats are absolutely taking it seriously, especially in the swing states where he could be decisive.
Yeah.
One thing I found interesting about your piece as well was that there were some voters that voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020 that no longer see 20 as sort of the outside the government anti-establishment figure, but are finding that in Kennedy. Now, whether that lasts going forward in the election, I think is a question to be seen. But as you noted, every single vote is going to matter, particularly in the few battleground states that both nominees are trying to win.
I think this is why there has to be an effort to educate, and voters have to understand. These voters who say, I don't want Trump or I don't want Biden, they have to understand that a vote for Kennedy or a third-party candidate is effectively going to hand the election to one or other of the primary candidates. I mean, there is no universe under our current system where a third-party candidate is going to win enough electoral votes to be president of the United States. Now, we could have a whole other discussion about why that is and whether that's a good thing or not. But the fact of the matter is, for November, so that is a task, I would say that the Biden campaign has in front of them is to help these voters understand that casting a vote for Robert Kennedy, for example, is not so much casting an anti-establishmentarian vote as it is, saying, well, Donald Trump's going to have a second term.
Kristen, who do you think RFK Jr.'s candidacy hurts? Is it President Biden? Is it Donald Trump? How do you see it? You talk to all these people all the time.
Right. So I did a focus group for the New York Times all about these voters who had voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and then voted for him again in 2020, but now said, I'm off the Trump train. And I wanted to get at why. And for some of them, it was things like January 6th that came up. They said, I was with him, but that to me was a breaking point. But there were others who said, I thought he was going to be this outsider. I thought he was going to be this change agent. I thought he was going to be anti-establishment. And now he kind of is the establishment. Now we know what we're getting with him. We know what this looks like, and I don't think I want it anymore. And so it was fascinating to me to see what does a Trump to RFK voter look like. And it has me taking him a little more seriously as actually a potential threat to Trump's coalition for that kind of, I don't want to say low propensity, but that's in the political polling world, what we would call them, the type of folks who they're probably not watching the news every day, but they tune in periodically. They're might vote if they found someone compelling. They were a big part of Trump's coalition in 2016. What if Trump doesn't have them this time around and they go to RFK? That could be very fascinating.
Congressman, final thought?
I thought your piece in the New York Times was terrific. I read it out of interest because I'm interested as well to see where do these voters go. And you're encouraging me that maybe they'll eat into the Trump coalition because, as Kate said, this is two candidates. One of them is going to win. And I got to push back on the American electorate's perception that somehow it's bad or worse. That's not true. Joe Biden has been a strong and good president. The economy is growing. He is standing up for the United States and NATO on the world stage. He's handling a series of foreign policy crises with statesmanship. And the State of the Union was his first opportunity to make that case to a wider audience. He made a case about freedom, democracy, and a strong middle class. And I think we're going to see that case made more sharply in the next 9 months.
All right. Congressman Jake Auchincloss, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. The rest of the panel is going to stick around. We'll see them in just a moment.